few weeks ago, I made a video de-influencing and debunking some common health trends, and I mentioned in that video that I would love to share some of the habits, routines, lifestyle changes that I've made over the past 10 years that have really made a big difference when it comes to my health and are actually more science-backed than some of the common routines and trends that we see online. And you guys really wanted that video, so here we are. These are the 10 things that I have noticed have made a huge difference when it comes to my health and some of the science behind them. I've been on a health journey for over 12 years at this point. I really struggled with everything, really bad anxiety, depression, low mood. I dealt with a lot of digestive issues, gas, bloating, constipation. In the past, I had a really bad relationship with food where I had a really restrictive approach to food that led to a lot of binging. That really led to a lot of weight fluctuations and the inability to maintain a steady weight. I've also dealt with painful periods, irregular cycles, acne, skin issues, all of that kind of stuff. I feel like my health is in a much better place right now, and I really think that it's down to the work that I've been doing over the past really like 5 or more years. My late teens and early 20s was a little bit of a mess when it came to my health, and I really felt like my mid 20s and my late 20s, I've implemented so many other things in my life that have really helped to get my health to a baseline that I'm really happy with. Not every day is perfect and things definitely come up, but I feel like I'm much better equipped to handle them, and I feel like overall I'm in a much higher baseline, if that makes sense. I picked 10 things that I really think have made a big difference when it came to my health. Starting out with number 1, and I was actually gonna put this one last, but I actually wanted to put it first because I think that it's really important. Just sitting down and really understanding what the barriers are to your health. And if you say that there's no barriers to your health, but your health is not where you want it to be, then there are barriers and you just haven't identified those. Really common ones that I go through with patients are things like, well, I don't have enough time to cook healthy meals. I don't have enough time to go to the gym. I'm really fatigued, or I have low motivation, so I don't feel motivated to work out. I'm really indecisive. I get decision fatigue and I get very overwhelmed really easily by different health choices. Understanding what the barriers are to your health and what's getting in the way of you implementing all of those things that you know are going to move the needle when it comes to your health. Because I think most of us know the things that are going to help us. There are things like regular exercise, spending more time outside, getting more steps in, spending more time with others in social settings, eating more fiber, eating more protein, eating more whole foods. But what's getting in the way of you practically implementing those on a weekly basis? So for me, I know that I'm incredibly indecisive. So the less decisions that I have to make throughout the week, the better. So the more that I can plan, the better. And that looks like very similar meals on repeat. You guys know I like to have staple meals that I know I can throw together, that I know will reach my protein and my fiber goals. It looks like scheduling in my workouts. I really think that scheduling in workouts should be almost a non-negotiable for anyone. If you just say you're going to work out 3 times per week, but you don't put it in your calendar, you don't know what workouts you're going to do, you don't know what time you're going to go to the gym, it's actually very unlikely that those workouts are going to get done. And then in terms of motivation, because I know that that is a huge one, and I always say if you wait to be really motivated to go to the gym or to eat healthy, you're probably going to be waiting a really long time. A lot of the times too, I like to remind myself how good I will feel at the end of those. So I rarely ever leave the gym feeling worse than when I went. So trying to consistently remind myself that not really motivated to go to the gym right now, but I know that it's going to improve my energy. I know that it's going to improve my mood by the end of the workout. So kind of reminding myself. So understanding what the barriers to your health and implementing those healthy routines are, and then figuring out a really good strategy to overcome those barriers. That is going to be kind of the first thing that made a really big difference for me, especially. Number 2 is going to be strength training and focusing on building muscle and body recomposition. The more that I learn about metabolic health and overall health, especially for women, the more important body composition and muscle mass becomes. It's important to remember that both muscle and adipose tissue or fat tissue is metabolically active. They're just metabolically active in very different ways. And the benefits of strength training go so far beyond just weight loss and weight management, although I do think that for weight loss, weight management, metabolic health, insulin resistance, diabetes, all of those things, body recomposition and building muscle should be such a large part of that. But the benefits really go so far beyond that. We also know that women, especially as we age, are at a much higher risk of developing osteoporosis compared to our male counterparts, and strength training can really help to strengthen the bone, helps with joint stabilization and coordination. coordination. Working on that strength and coordination can help with preventing falls or decreasing the risk for falls. I also find that on a confidence piece, I feel really confident when I'm strength training. I know that I'm doing something that is building strength and muscle and resiliency within my body. So I like the mental emotional benefits that I get from it as well. Also, just knowing that you're challenging yourself and you're improving every week, really satisfying and gratifying to me. In terms of metabolic benefits, we know that muscle is metabolically active. It's a huge glucose sink for the body. About 80% of glucose goes into muscle after we eat, depending on the person's body composition. When we look at the progression of different metabolic conditions like insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, all of those metabolic conditions that cluster together, there's so much evidence that building muscle and working on body recomposition is so beneficial for that. That's one of the huge reasons why I really prioritize strength training. And we also know that as women, we tend to lose muscle mass as we age. It starts in our 30s and then it does decline more rapidly when we enter our 50s and 60s. And strength training can really help with that. We know that there's some anabolic resistance. Anabolic means to grow. So as we age, there is anabolic resistance. It's harder to put on muscle, but there's actually a lot of evidence that simply strength training, exercise, and protein can help overcome that anabolic resistance. And the nice thing is that you don't need to do a ton of it to see benefit. I really say that strength training is one of those things where you don't have to do it for a very long time every week, but the benefits you get are so big. No other form of exercise gives you that many benefits for so little quote unquote time in the gym. I really strength train about 30 to 40 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. Bear in mind, I have been doing strength training since I was about 16 years old. So I've got quite a few years of it under my belt, over a decade. I think that right now I'm in like a really nice maintenance phase where I've actually been able to decrease the amount of strength training sessions I have in a week and still maintain all of my gains from those. Yeah, strength training would definitely be something that has made a very big difference. So the next one is going to be fiber. You guys know I love fiber. I think it's one of the most underrated nutrients in our diet. I know a lot of people are talking about fiber right now. I still think it's underrated. I really started incorporating more fiber about 2 or 3 years ago, I would say. I really started focusing on it, and I definitely think that it's made a big difference. There's just so many ways that fiber works within our body, and the more I learn about gut microbiome and all the different ways that the gut microbiome impacts our health, I just realize more and more how important fiber is. I'm like, there's no way it's more important, and then I learn something new. I'm like, wow, it's super important. You want to make sure that you're getting a good mix of soluble and insoluble fiber. I aim for about 30 grams per day total of fiber, and I find that that's a really good sweet spot. Found high fiber foods that I can incorporate on a regular basis. I also find that breaking it down meal by meal can be really helpful as well. So trying to get, around 8 to 12 grams per meal. That's a really easy way to make sure that you're getting to that 30 grams by the end of the day. And like I said, we can't even cover all of the different ways that fiber impacts our health, but it's so important for feeding the beneficial bacteria in our gut. And those beneficial bacteria take the fiber and they make short chain fatty acids like butyrate. And those play so many different roles within the body, from the immune system to the cardiovascular system, metabolic impact, hormonal impacts. There's just so many ways. So you want to make sure that you're actually giving those beneficial bacteria enough fuel so that they can create those short chain fatty acids. And then we also know that fiber is also going to play a role in keeping that good beneficial bacteria. I always say that fiber and polyphenols are what those beneficial bacteria thrive off of, and I love including fiber, the polyphenols, and then some natural antimicrobials in my diet. And including all of those helps to maintain a beneficial balance of flora within your gut, because we want to make sure that we're supporting those beneficial bacteria, and then we also want to make sure that we don't have excess of those pathogenic bacteria that can cause a lot of different issues within the body. And I know most of us think about fiber in the sense of having a regular bowel movement every day, and that's definitely another huge reason to include enough fiber. I think it's also really important to remember that our liver will package up excess cholesterol and excess hormones, package those up into bile. That bile goes into the gallbladder and then it gets spit out into our intestine. By fiber binds to that and carries it out through our bowel movement. From a metabolic and a hormonal perspective, fiber is going to be really important as well. We also know that from a digestive aspect, when you eat fiber, it slows the digestion of the meal. So again, from a blood sugar perspective, it's going to be important. I really just think that you can link fiber to any aspect of your health, and it's going to be beneficial to increase fiber. The only place I would caution people is if you are finding that fiber is causing a lot of digestion issues, then I would definitely recommend working one-on-one with someone. Either you're increasing the fiber too fast, or there is other issues going on in the digestive tract that you want to address first before you work on repopulating the gut and increasing fiber and all of that kind of stuff. That would be, oh my gosh, we're only on point number 3, but fiber has definitely made a huge impact as well. Number 4 is going to be getting really comprehensive blood work done on a yearly basis. Sometimes I'll do blood work more than once a year, but more so it's because we're testing specific things. But I like to do a big comprehensive blood work once a year just to see where all my levels are. I really think that a really good clinical assessment paired with comprehensive blood work can be so helpful for just putting together a case, figuring out exactly what's going on in your body. And the biggest pushback that I get with women when I bring up blood work is that they've said that they've had blood work done in the past and their doctor always says that everything looks fine even though they don't feel fine. And there's a few reasons why that happens really commonly. The first reason is a lot of the time, unfortunately, they're just not running enough tests. If you only run a CBC and a ferritin, a lot of the times most people are going to come back looking fine. So actually understanding what lab testing should be run and having enough lab tests run, making sure that we're actually testing all the things that should be tested, that will give us a lot better of an understanding of what's going on. The second reason is that a lot of the times they're going off the ranges that are given on the lab work. And again, MDs are trained to go off those ranges as well, because those tend to be the ranges for either disease. So when you move out of the normal ranges and into the quote unquote disease range, or they're based on the ranges of the people going to the lab. But the issue with that is that as a population, we're becoming sicker and sicker. So those quote unquote normal ranges are actually shifting over time. So those ranges aren't really a great indication of if you're actually doing well in that area. And there are a few tests where I just go off the ranges on the labs because they're a little bit more cut and dry. But for so many things like nutrient status, metabolic markers, thyroid markers, a lot of those you want to be looking at a smaller window, because there is a difference between, oh, now you've been diagnosed with diabetes, or now you're diagnosed with hypothyroidism and there's some early on insulin resistance, or there's some insulin resistance altogether and the thyroid is under functioning. Those are two very different things, but only one of those is going to be blatantly flagged on a lab report. So that is the second reason. And then the third reason is because the labs aren't being interpreted as a whole. So a lot of the times we're looking for patterns, and one of the most common patterns that I see in practice is what I call a little bit of everything. All the nutrient markers are borderline low, the thyroid function is borderline low, maybe the cholesterol is borderline high, and the metabolic markers are a little bit off, maybe the liver enzymes are borderline high, and the patient doesn't feel very good. And if you were to look at any of those single markers in isolation, they may not seem drastically off, but when you look at that lab report as a whole, you can see why the patient is struggling. That is kind of the 3 main reasons. Again, just not enough tests being run, the lab ranges not necessarily being the best to go off of, and then the lab work not being interpreted as a whole. And that's the benefit with just doing the comprehensive blood work, is that you get to see everything together. And again, we're looking for more of those optimal ranges, those disease preventative ranges. Because I also say too that when it comes to health and taking a holistic approach to your health, and this is kind of the strength that I think that naturopathic doctors bring to healthcare, is that we can look at all the systems in the body as a whole, so that we're not looking at one place in isolation. And then number 5 is going to be getting about 10,000 steps per day and including more exercise snacks into my day. So getting regular movement throughout my day has been a huge game changer for my mental health, my energy levels, and my cognitive function. Whenever I'm starting to feel my energy dip throughout the day, I just get up and go for a walk. If I don't have enough time to go for a walk, I try and do something like air squats or just a little bit of movement to get the blood flowing again. Especially if you're sitting at a laptop for hours on end, you want to make sure that you're getting up and you're moving. I also say I never trust an indoor thought. Sometimes I can be working on my laptop for a few hours and I'll start to get anxious or nervous, and really really the moment that I get outside and I see the sunlight, I feel so much better. It's also so important for lymphatic support as well. Our lymphatic system, unlike our cardiovascular system, doesn't have a central pump. In our cardiovascular system, we have our heart. So having regular muscle contractions is going to be really important for supporting our lymphatic system. We also know that muscle contractions are great for blood sugar regulation even throughout the day. So trying to get up and get regular movement throughout the day, I really aim for 10,000 steps. I've just found that consistently I feel my best at 10,000 steps. We also see this reflected in the literature that once we get to about 7,000 steps, we start to see benefit with overall health. So trying to get at least 7,000, hopefully 10,000 steps per day, that makes a big difference. I also find it makes a big difference for weight management as well, just helping to increase the caloric expenditure, for mood, for energy. Regular exercise, intermittent throughout the day, just makes such a big difference. I always say, even if you go to the gym in the morning, want to make sure that you're moving regularly throughout the day. I also say, and this kind of relates to the first point that we talked about and understanding the barriers, something that has really helped me understand this even further is the idea of environmental mismatch, the idea that our environment has changed so much in the past 200 years. Humans have really evolved to live in a very different environment that we live in right now. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that the environment that we live in is not conducive to our health, but I really like to look at the last 200 years and how much life, society, and culture has changed. And a huge part of that is that we've really eliminated so much low intensity movement throughout our day. Through the change in transportation, we have cars, we have trains, buses, right? Like, we're not walking different places. We have a lot more appliances in our house. We're doing a lot less manual labor. Even the job market, really the Industrial Revolution and changes in agriculture shifted that so much, but so many of our jobs are really, really sedentary. So looking at that big environmental mismatch, obviously movement is just one aspect of it. There's a lot of other ways that we're at mismatch with our environment, but just looking at ways that you can incorporate more low intensity movement throughout your day, those little exercise snacks, getting out for more walk. I also love to think about the blue zones and how they have so much low intensity movement, specifically gardening. They do so much gardening, and again, I think that there's so many benefits to that. Being in the soil, being exposed to all those microbes, the benefits that it has for your microbiome, and then the fact that you're eating the food that you grew in local soil. Again, that's a whole other benefit, but a huge thing that you see is that they have really great mobility even into their later years, and a huge part of that is because they're doing all of this low intensity mobility focused movement throughout the day, especially gardening where they're squatting down, they're using their hands, all of those kind of things. So getting more steps in throughout the day and low intensity movement. Okay, moving on to number 6, which is going to be protein. We also talked about protein in the de-influencing video, and we talked about the health claims that are being made with these ultra high protein diets. You guys know how I feel about those. I don't think that you have to be eating an insane amount of protein, but making sure that you're incorporating protein into every meal is going to be really important. And I've noticed it's made a huge difference, specifically in how satisfied I feel after meals. I find if I have a high protein, high fiber meal, I feel very full and satiated until my next meal. Physically, I feel full, but I also feel full mentally. I feel satisfied. I don't feel like I'm thinking about food in between meals. So that's been really helpful. And then also I've noticed improvements in my energy level. I have noticed improvements in body composition and also my hair, skin, nails. We just know that amino acids play so many different roles within the body. So protein has been really helpful for that. It's also been really helpful for improving my digestion, my overall gut health. Again, we talked a little bit about calculating your protein needs in that de-influencing video. I will say there are definitely times where people may want to go higher, especially as we age, again, to counteract that age-related sarcopenia and muscle loss and that anabolic resistance. Increasing your protein intake can definitely be helpful, and I do find that for my patients who are in perimenopause or menopause, their protein requirements and their protein goals are going to be higher than someone who is in their 20s and 30s. So just something to keep in mind, but I've definitely found that increasing my protein, definitely not to an insane amount, but in that 20 to 30 grams per meal has been really, really helpful as well. And then number 7 is including more mindfulness activities and white space in my day. And what I mean by white space is when we have no external stimulation, when you just give your brain and your mind time to rest or to wander, to think. I know it's such a novel concept in 2025, but I really don't think that we have enough time in our day to just let our mind wander and be curious and just allow ourselves to either be at rest and at peace and allow our mind to rest, or just allow our mind to kind of explore our own thoughts and for us to be aware of our own thoughts. Because I think that so often we have these thoughts running in the subconscious, but there's so much stimulation in our day-to-day life that we don't actually get to hear those, but our subconscious hears those and our body hears those, and we hold on to those thoughts even if we're not aware of it. And I know that carving out specific time in your day for white space can be really overwhelming, especially if you have quite a full schedule. So what I've really tried to do is, if I'm doing a task like folding the laundry, arranging some flowers, cooking, something like that, I really try to not have background noise or background entertainment on, whether that's a TV show, a podcast. Sometimes I'll listen to really calming music or music with no lyric. That can be really peaceful, but I'm trying more and more to just have complete white space and silence. Honestly, it is really nice and peaceful, and I don't think that we notice how big of a difference having constant stimulation is for our nervous system and feeling on edge and burnt out by the end of the day. I think it's also really interesting how traditionally you would have been doing physical activity and then allowed your mind to rest, or vice versa. You would have been doing some sort of mental stimulation and allowed your body to rest. And what I mean by that is maybe you were washing the dishes or folding laundry or doing household chores, and your mind would be somewhat at rest. Obviously, you're having some cognitive function just doing the task that you're doing, but really there's not a ton of mental stimulation. And then on the flip side, you would sit down and write a letter or do some work and your body would be at rest. And I feel like in today's society, we've smushed those all together, where now we're constantly listening to a podcast or music or background TV show or a lecture while we're doing household tasks. And then on the flip side, we're all using like walking pads now and things like that to move while we're doing mental work. And not saying that walking pads are bad. I actually think that they can be a really great tool, but I just think that it's interesting that we don't have that nice balance of physical work, mental rest, and physical work. Wait, did I say that right? That we don't have that nice balance between physical work and mental rest, and mental work and physical rest. And then we wonder why at the end of the day, we feel like all we have the energy to do is sit on the couch and binge Netflix shows, right? And we need that physical and mental rest. Where I think that if you incorporate more of that balance throughout the day, it can make a really big difference. So I'm a huge advocate for incorporating more white space. Okay, the next one is going to be lowering toxin exposure. And I'm gonna be 100% honest, I don't know how much of a difference this has made to my physical health at this point. I know it has definitely helped, but symptoms wise, feeling wise, it's probably not made that big of a difference. And if anything, it probably made my anxiety worse at the start. And our receptionist actually asked me a few weeks ago if I enjoy having all of the knowledge and information and access to information that I have as a naturopathic doctor. And of course I do. I would not trade the knowledge that I have for anything. But when it comes to this in particular, it can be very overwhelming because I can't really shut off my brain when I see something that I know is not the best for toxin exposure or chemicals or health or something like that. But I know that it's going to be somewhat out of my control. It's very hard for me to shut that off. But on the flip side, it has made me a lot more aware of the things that I'm bringing into my house. And that's what I really focus on, is the things that I'm bringing into my house. Of course, when I go out, I do try and make really good decisions. If I'm going to a coffee shop, I try to remember to bring a reusable mug so that hot liquid is not going into a plastic cup. Little things like that. But I also recognize that so often there's things that are outside of my control. If a loved one cooks me something with love and care on a Teflon pan, I'm not gonna say no, right? Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. I control what I can control, and the things that are outside of my control, I don't. I also work really hard to support those natural detoxification pathways. I know that that doesn't take care of everything in our environment, and there are those quote unquote forever chemicals, but I do try and do my best. In terms of what I bring into my house, I do focus on household and household cleaning products, what I'm using in my kitchen, and then my personal care products. So we'll start by talking about in the kitchen. I've swapped to cooking on either stainless steel or cast iron, really using mostly stainless steel just kind of for ease of cooking, and I find that they're lighter, they're easier to clean. I just use them more than my cast iron. I try and limit plastics. I use all glass Tupperware, and if I am using something plastic in my kitchen, I just really try and make sure it does not come into contact with hot food. In terms of household cleaning products, I do try and look for cleaner options. I also know that there's a lot of greenwashing and it can be very overwhelming. Just look for unscented crafted, ones without fragrances, and ones with pretty clean ingredients. I'm definitely not a toxicologist. That's definitely not my area of expertise. I will link one that I follow on Instagram, and I find her content to be very helpful. I will say that sometimes I have to mute her content because it becomes too overwhelming and too anxiety provoking for me. But for swaps and talking about lowering your exposure and things like that, she can be really helpful. So I'll link her account. And then in terms of personal care products, again, I kind of take the same approach. I look for cleaner options, definitely looking at reducing fragrances and phthalates. And then again, just overall reducing the amount of products that I use on my body. I find that this is the best for my wallet. This is the best for toxin exposure. This is the best for the environment. Just using less and keeping my skincare, my hair care, and my makeup routine very minimum. Honestly, if you were trying to reduce your toxin exposure, before you even go out and start replacing stuff, I would just start on lowering the amount of products that you use in general. So that's the approach that I take to the toxin side. I think it's a really practical approach. I always say that progress is going to be better than doing nothing. Talk to patients who are so overwhelmed by all of the cooking pan options that they don't even buy a new cooking pan because they're so overwhelmed with all of the options, and they just keep using their scratched up Teflon pan. And that's not what we want. Looking at what swaps you can make, balancing that with your sanity and just your life and your budget in general is going to be the best option. I wanted to include this still because, like I said, I don't think it's made a huge jump in my symptoms that I've been experiencing, although I know for other reproductive conditions like endometriosis and PCOS that reducing those toxin exposures can really help with reducing symptoms. But I think for my overall health and my long-term health, it's definitely something that has been worth the investment for me. Okay, we're almost near the end, just two more. The ninth thing that has made a really big difference is having a regular journaling practice. I think that this goes really well with incorporating more white space. But for me, I'm someone where I can hold a lot of emotions and a lot of stress in my body, and sitting down and journaling and processing my thoughts has been really helpful. Pairing this with therapy has been really helpful as well. Again, just for unpacking the thoughts that I'm having on repeat. I'm definitely someone who can ruminate on different thoughts, and I find that different patterns will continuously come up in my life if I don't process them and deal with them and figure out a way to change my behavior. Therapy and journaling has been especially helpful for, again, unpacking more of those thoughts, limiting beliefs, recurrent thoughts that I've been having. And if you're brand new to journaling, I would definitely recommend starting with different prompts. Those can be really helpful. I also just like setting a timer for 5 or 10 minutes and just doing continuous writing no matter what comes up. The only rule is that I just have to keep writing, and I find that sometimes really interesting things can come up. Yeah, that is what I will say about journaling. And then the last one that has made a huge difference, a massive difference with my sleep is practicing sleep hygiene and aligning with circadian rhythm, which is just that light and dark cycle that we have. I find that in the middle of summer and the middle of winter is when I struggle the most with this, just because in summer it stays light out for so long. That can be really disrupting because I'm still getting that bright light exposure. And then on the flip side, when we're in the middle of winter and the sun is rising really late and setting really early, that can be difficult as well, just because I end up using a lot more artificial or blue light in the evenings because my day doesn't end at 4:30. I still got other stuff to do. But apart from those really far extremes, working on sleep hygiene has been so helpful. And for me, the biggest things that I focus on is reducing my bright light exposure, my blue light and artificial light exposure in that hour before I go to bed, and then getting natural bright light exposure when I wake up in the morning, hopefully sunlight. Like I said, in the middle of winter, sometimes I'll use something like a sad lamp just to mimic that natural light, which you can't really mimic it, but I do my best to mimic it, and just having that bright light exposure. And that all helps to set that cortisol and melatonin pattern that we know is really important for our circadian rhythm. When we wake up, cortisol peaks, and that really contributes to that sense of awakeness and alertness first thing in the morning. Cortisol naturally decreases throughout the day, and then melatonin picks up at night, and that helps us get into that deep restorative sleep. And those are really governed by light. So controlling that light exposure and having that sleep hygiene has been really, really helpful. I also find that having some sort of relaxing wind down routine can be really helpful as well in the evening, just to help me get into that restful sleep. Sometimes, depending on the season of life that I'm in, I will use additional support like GABA or L-theanine. I will say that makes a huge difference in my ability to fall and stay asleep and how refreshed I feel with sleep, as well as my energy and my cognitive function throughout the day. Just working on sleep hygiene, my circadian rhythm, and aligning my eating and my living with that circadian rhythm has been really, really beneficial. Of course, we have that natural 28-ish day cycle that our hormones run off of, but just like men, we also do have that 24-hour cycle, and our digestion runs off that cycle, that cortisol melatonin pattern runs on that cycle, our thyroid runs on that cycle. So it's really important that we are aligning with that. And again, this comes back to that environmental mismatch. 200 years ago, you had to live by circadian rhythm because we didn't have all of this artificial light. But now, because we do have more artificial light, it's a lot easier to push that. That does wrap up this video. Of course, I think there's more things that I can talk about, but I think that I'm gonna end it here. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did like it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you know someone that would benefit from this video or any other content on my channel, definitely feel free to share that with them. If you guys aren't on my email list, I would definitely recommend checking that out. If you guys want to check out my Instagram, I will link that as well. And let me know in the comments what has been the biggest routine, habit, anything that's made a really big change for your health. Definitely drop it in the comments down below so we can all share what's moved the needle for us. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!